everyone. My name is Alexander Lucard, and I am an HMIS administrator for Montgomery County. In today's training, we are going to look at common annual assessment errors and how to fix them. If you're not sure what an annual assessment is, how to do them, or how to find errors in the APR, please refer to the previous annual assessment training. This is the second in the series. And today, we're going to look at 4 different common annual assessment errors and how to fix them. We're going to start off by going to Client Point here, and we're going to look up the first test person that we've made for today. We're going to look up a Darby Allen. Remember, when we look someone up in Client Point, we only need to do the first 2 or 3 letters of the name, because what we want to do is get the maximum search potential. But if you're not sure if the last name is spelled A-L-I-N, A-L-L-I-N, A-L-L-E-N, any of those options, we're just going to do the first 2 letters and it would pull up any of those possibilities. So you can see we have the first 2 letters here. We're going to click search. We can see there's only one Darby Allen in the system, so we can click on it. And because we know we're fixing annual assessment errors, we're just going to go right to that today. So there are 2 ways that we can get to the annual assessment. The first is by clicking on the entry exit here and then going to the interims. And the second is through the summary screen where we click project start date, hit save and continue, and go to the interims there. There are 2 different ways of getting there, same destination, different journey. Just wanted to make sure you are aware of them both. So we know that there's an annual assessment error here, correct? And we can see that this client came into the program on 4/6/2021. So let's go take a look at the interims date. And we can see that on 4/6/2022, yes, this is taking place in the future, unless you're watching this training sometime after April 6, 2022, we can see that the error here is that there are 2 annual assessments with the same day. The annual assessment was done on the correct day, 1 year to the day, 4/6/2021, 4/6/2022, but they accidentally did it twice. So what we're going to want to do to fix this, it's pretty easy. We're just going to click on the trash can and delete one of them. Now we can look at the till. We can see 12/27/55 and 12/28/07. So the timestamp says that they probably did them right in a row and just accidentally did it twice. So we can most likely delete the newer one, which is off by like a minute. But if you want to be sure, we can click on the pencil for each one, hit save and continue, and just look to make sure that there's no difference between the 2. We want to go to the HUD, COC, and ESG update and just double check to see that information is correct. Again, when we do an annual assessment or any sort of interim, we're going in to make sure all the information under the update or the point in time, depending on which one you're doing, is all correct. We can see the information is correct. And if we take a look at the second one, it's the same thing. And if you're still not sure, we can always click on the history, which are these little green, sometimes red, sometimes brown rectangles. Click on it. And we can see there's only one answer. Only one person's ever typed anything in, which says to me that this is just a pretty simple, whoops, I accidentally made it twice. So we can delete it. And we're done. That's all you have to do to fix a double up error. You just want to double check and make sure that there's no differences between the 2, even if they are only a few seconds off, and then delete the newer one. Now for the next client we're going to look up Chris Statlander. Again, what if we don't know how Chris is spelled? I know it's spelled K-R-I-S because I made the test client, but what if it's spelled Chris, right? So let's see what happens if we only do the last 2 letters of the last name, the first 2 letters of the last name. We do a search, and we can see a whole bunch of names come up because it's looking for anything with ST. You can see there's 20 different clients, but we know that it's part of the last name. So we can see there's a Ricky Starks, there's a Chris Statlander, and a whole bunch of tests. So the good news is we know that it's this one right here. But let's see what happens if you tried to do Chris CH. You see, it wouldn't show up. And then you'd be like, oh no, there isn't a Chris Statlander. I guess I'm going to have to make an account. So you always want to double check for multiple spellings. Ask the client to spell their name. Make sure you have it somewhere written, because if it's a referred client, you should have the proper spelling of the name somewhere. And so we want to make sure that we don't create duplicates. So as you can see, if we try to look up Chris's and Christopher Statlander, nothing shows up, and that might make you to accidentally make a duplicate client. However, if we spell it correctly, so again, we always want to ask the client to spell their name or make sure we have a written version of it on the referral. We should. So let's go into Chris Statlander's account. We're going to go to the entry exit. Now we can see that Chris has been there since 2015, right? 4/6/2015. So almost 6 years. And then we look at the interims, and look, they've been doing interims. So those are probably financial changes, physical changes, because remember, you do an interim after every change the client has after that project start date, their housing move-in date, if their income goes up, their SSI or SSDI changes, their health insurance changes, if they gain or lose a disability, any of that, you should be doing an interim. And in this example, we can see that they've been doing interims for Statlander, but they haven't been doing the annual assessments. And so what we want to do is get those annual assessments in. And yes, you are going to have to go back and do all the annual assessments. Now, the great thing about an annual assessment is because we see that they've actually been doing interims, that they've been updating the client and making change to them as needed. All we have to do is put the interims in. So that's pretty quick. It'll take about 5 seconds per interim. So let's do it. Add interim review, annual assessment, 04/06/2016. And we can be fairly confident, because of these things are being done, that all we have to do is create the annual assessment. We can flip over to update. Look at everything. And because everything is in the system, we're just going in and creating updates. And we want to make sure that we get one in for every anniversary that the client was in the program. So we can see that they were updating in 4/17. We can do 4/18. And so if you're a permanent supportive program, this is kind of an error that you might see often, or not often, but more often than the other program, I should say. And that's because clients stay in your programs for years. And so if a person's not doing annual assessments, you're going to have a lot of cleanup to do, because you need to do one for every single year. So 16, 17, 18, 19. So here we can see that nothing had been updated between 2019 and 2020. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to double check with this interim, 04/06/2020, and make sure that there aren't any errors or anything weird looking in there for their account. Now, if you've just been handed off this client, you're new and this client's been in your program for years, you might not be able to, double check that the information is correct. And so you'll have to move on to the most recent update / interim. But here we can see, hey, look, yeah, they've been doing their income. They have earned income. We can see the full history here because we're into one of the later annual assessments. And so we can see that, yeah, they have been updating it pretty regularly. Total monthly income. And here we can see one error. As long as we're in here, let's fix it. Because this is on 4/6/2020, right? And so the earned income should be $750. See this on 4/6, it was $750. So let's change that. Let's fix that income. So that we want the most recent income and the total monthly income to add up. So just a little trick thing to throw in there. And now for the last one. Now we can do the 2021 one. So see, it doesn't take that long to clean it up. So even though there were 6 that we had to put in, there's still some easy cleanup to do, and it doesn't take very long. And we can see here that her income changed on 1/1/21. We want to make sure total monthly income adds up. Other than that, everything looks good as we go through it. We hit save and exit. And now look at all those annual assessments and updates. We got a lot there for Statlander, 9+. And then you're going to see that with clients that are in programs for a very long time, especially with permanent support. And that's what we have to do when we notice that annual assessments aren't being done at all for years. Now, the next client we're going to look at is going to be Colt. We're going to look up a Colt Cabana. We've got the first two letters of the name. We can see there's Colt. Got a little alias. We can click on his name. And let's go in and take a look at the client. Let's go look at his entry exit. Came in on 3/1/2020. So let's look at his interim. All right. And he did have an annual assessment done on 4/15/2020. So what's wrong here? It's 2020 was when he came in, and in 2021, he had his annual assessment. Well, if you remember from the previous training, an annual assessment has to be within 30 days of their actual year anniversary. So it can be up to 30 days before, or it can be up to 30 days after. As we can see here, Colt came in on 3/1/2020, which means the latest his annual assessment could be done is on 3/31/2020. Anything past that date will not count and will show up an error in the APR. And we can see here that it was done on 4/15/2020. So what that means is it's outside the actual time frame for an acceptable annual assessment. So we could do one of two things. We could change the date here. We could change the date to be more in line with when he actually came in. So we could change it to maybe 03/31. Or what I would do is I would go in first and just double check to make sure that they didn't make any changes on 4/15/2021. And the reason for that is because all those changes are going to be date time stamped with 4/15/2021. And if we change the date of this annual assessment, you're not going to be able to see them. So let's just double check. All right. Oops. And again, we want it to be in the update. In the training version, it still defaults to the. Okay. We can see income looks good, $1,000. Let's see when that income was done. They've been making it since 3/1/2020. There hasn't been a change, so that adds up. The income is still good. Disabilities are all still no. Non-cash benefits all still no. Health insurance, Medicaid, we can see that. We've got everything in. So everything looks good. So because everything looks good, we can actually change this date to be actually within the line of the annual assessment. There were no changes made. If there were any changes made on this 4/15 annual assessment, what we do is we would change this to an update. And then we would add an annual assessment somewhere closer to the actual date. Let's say 03/15. So again, if there were any changes made on that old annual assessment, we would change that to an interim, an update interim, and we would just create a new annual assessment. But because there weren't any changes made, we can easily just make this annual assessment 3/15 and call it a day. So you can fix it in one of those two ways. It just depends on if any changes were made to the client's account on that annual assessment that fell outside the actual date range that you're allowed to do an annual assessment. And that's going to be a common one, especially with someone new. You'll see some new people do the annual assessment outside the range, or you'll see them try to do them all on the same day. So every client's going to have an annual assessment of like January 1st, even though they all came in at different times. And it's them being new, and we just have to catch those corrections and teach them to do it. And now Colt is fixed. And the last one we're going to do today is we're going to look up Christopher Daniel. Again, only a few letters needed. There we go. We can see that he's in the system. Remember, we're using a test system, so there's going to be a lot less clients, and it's a lot easier to find them than there is in the live version of HMS. We're going to click on his name. We're going to go to the entry exit, and let's see what's up with Christopher Daniel. 4/6/2020. Let's look at his interim. Oh, do we see what's wrong here? There's supposed to be an annual assessment for 4/6/2021. And there is something in here for 4/6/2021, but it's an update. It's not an annual assessment. And what that says to me is that, they just actually went down too far on the drop-down menu. It's really easy to do that. It's true with any drop-down menu. A drop-down menu error occurs when you're meaning to click here and your mouse accidentally goes there. It happens to everyone. And so all we would do is we just go in, make sure that the annual assessment has been changed to actually say annual assessment. Hit save and continue, and really you're done. You don't have anything else to do here because you're just fixing the type. And there we go. And that's all there is to fix that one. Annual assessment errors are really easy to fix. You just have to take the time to find them and do the fixing. Again, you want to fix these annual assessment errors because it will negatively affect your APR, especially in the income sections, and your SAGE and your NOFA if you don't. Annual assessments are weighed pretty heavily because not doing an annual assessment literally means, hey, we didn't bother to check up on the client this year. So we always want to make sure we get those in. Not having an annual assessment is a big red flag to the funders, and you want to make sure that you get them in because they only take 5 seconds to do. And as we saw here, we did a whole bunch of fixes in just a few minutes. Thank you for joining me today. That's all there is for the training. We looked at the 4 most common annual assessment errors and how to fix them. And anytime you get stuck on this, feel free to come back to this training or to view the PowerPoint version as well. We have both. Thank you for joining me today and have a great one.